Let's talk to David Spencer now, who Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange. David, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. You wrote yesterday about the Sentencing Council and their remarkable letter to Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary. They seem to think that that they're not really answerable to her, and they may well be in the right to say that, but you called the letter remarkable. Tell us why.
It is remarkable, and this sort of incident is why calls and beliefs around two-tier justice are being fueled. People will look at the background to this incident, where the Sentencing Council have produced guidelines which say that judges should take a different approach with ethnic minority or transgender defendants after they're convicted when they look at who to get a pre-sentence report for. And people will rightly ask the question, well, why for that group of people and not for everyone else?
Right.
Just the whole thing sounds like and looks like two-tier justice. And then to compound it, we then see that the Justice Secretary quite rightly was calling this into question and saying that she was going to have a look at this, and she's absolutely right to do that. And in response, the Sentencing Council double down their approach and then start to question what right ministers or Parliament have in relation to this at all. It is, as I said yesterday, absolutely remarkable. And I have to say, the original sin here was probably about 15, 16 years ago. Parliament and the government of the day, back in 2009, saw fit to hand over all of these powers to an unelected, unaccountable quango. And the reality is what Parliament now needs to do is reassert itself and say, actually, while judges, quite rightly, when sentencing, can impose sentences for individual cases, the guidelines, the maximum sentence and these sorts of issues should be decided by Parliament. And people seem to forget, or certainly the members of the Sentencing Council seem to have gone, that it is Parliament in our democratic country that is supreme, not unelected quangocrats.
That's right. And it seems to be a more regular occurrence now, though, for lawyers and for judges in particular, activist judges, some would call them, to be sort of getting in the face of politicians and deliberately going against what you might regard as government policy. I mean, we've seen these immigration panel judges recently, making sure that people can stay in this country despite the fact that they're clearly dangerous, or they're clearly criminal, or they're clearly people who should be deported, but they appear to be unswathed and unadorned by any kind of belief in what our country's laws actually state.
And in this case, with the Sentencing Council, it's even worse, actually, because what appears to be happening is that they're using their own resources, Sentencing Council, publicly funded resources, to essentially, in their letter, lobby for the powers that they should and shouldn't have, which Parliament decide. I mean, that seems to me an astounding way for a public body to behave, to be lobbying in a letter for how Parliament should legislate to deal with. And you mentioned the foreign nationals piece. Well, Policy Exchange published a paper last week which demonstrated that the cost of crime to the British economy is £250 billion a year, about 10% of our GDP. One of the recommendations we made there was that foreign nationals who come to this country and commit criminal offences should be deported. And I think that's entirely appropriate, given that the cost to our economy and our country is £250 billion every single year.
Yeah, right. And who could forget Lady Justice Carr, who is Baroness Carr, of course, Sue Carr, who had a go both at the Prime Minister and Kemi Badenoch, Leader of the Opposition, for daring to question a decision that was made by one of these judges, and more or less told them, back off, you shouldn't be giving us any grief.
And again, absolutely remarkable, because this discussion took place between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition in Parliament, democratically elected representatives there who represent the people. And, it is Parliament that is supreme. And frankly, if the discussion can't be had there, then where would the Chief Justice like the discussion to be had? It is a remarkable set of circumstances, and it really is time for Parliament to demonstrate that it is the supreme body, as opposed to other groups, whether they be quangos, unelected judges, whoever they might be.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me play a little voice note I've got here from Kim, who's been listening and watching intently. See what you make of this.
Morning, Mike. Kim from near Bristol here. On the note about people who are from an ethnic minority getting lesser sentences, I mean, it's just flat out obviously racist and unfair for a start. But even if you were to say, oh, there's an argument for it being fair somehow, I'm just wondering how much of an ethnic minority do you need to be to qualify? So obviously, if your parents are from a non-UK country, I guess you could say that would qualify, certainly if you are. But what about grandparents, great-grandparents? Would that count? Can I claim my Viking ancestry? What about if I'm Welsh? Just asking. Cheers, Mike. Keep going.
Yeah, it's a good point. And it is. I mean, once you open the door on this kind of nonsense, it could lead anywhere, couldn't it?
I honestly don't know the answer to Kim's question, I have to confess. But the reality here is that, and the crucial error that gets made here is the presumption that disproportionality is the same as discrimination.
Yeah.
And that is simply not the case. There may be all sorts of reasons why different people from different ethnicities or different faiths or cultures, there are different rates of sentencing. There can be all sorts of reasons for that. But the automatic presumption that what is at hand here is racism is flawed. And it is part of an ideology which I'm afraid has embedded itself in the criminal justice system and all over the state and really needs to be wrenched out.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the story that came as a result of a Freedom of Information request to the Ministry of Justice itself about sex crimes being committed by foreigners, up to a quarter of sex crimes being committed by people from foreign countries, foreign nationals, and of course not just sex crimes but also drug crimes, theft as well, violent crimes, all disproportionately represented by foreign criminals. And so the idea is that, if you're going to be giving these people a lesser sentence on the grounds that they're from Congo, despite the fact that they've committed more violent attacks than anybody else in Britain, that's entirely wrong-headed, isn't it?
Well, this really doesn't seem to me to be a situation which is filled with complexity. If you are a foreign national and you come to the United Kingdom and you commit a crime, then you should be deported.
Right.
Now, if you're sentenced,
shouldn't be controversial, that should it?
That should not be controversial. If you're sentenced to a community sentence or a suspended sentence, then straight away you should be deported. If you're sentenced to a term of imprisonment, then you should be in prison. And frankly, I don't see why we should be paying for rehabilitation or any of that sort of stuff, because you, at the end of your sentence, will be deported.
Yeah.
That should be what happens. That is what Policy Exchange has recommended a number of times now. I'm afraid I struggle to see the complexity in that.
Yeah, absolutely right. David, great to talk to you. Common sense personified. Thank you very much indeed. Head of Crime and Justice at the Policy Exchange. That story, by the way, Britain's accounted for 12,619 sex offence convictions, representing a rate of 2.66 per 10,000 of their population in England. However, based on convictions per 10,000 of the population, Afghans have got 77 convictions at the top, with a rate of 59 per 10,000, 22.3 times that of people from Britain. They were followed by Eritreans, who accounted for 59 convictions at a rate of 53.6 per 10,000 population. So they're way over and above the norm. And obviously, this is a massive problem. But these judges want to give them lesser sentences on the grounds that they're foreign, or they're from, a different ethnic minority. Well, I'm sorry, you can get stuffed, mate. Foreign criminals need to be locked up for longer than British criminals so that they don't do it again. And then they need to be deported, right? It's not difficult. As David Spencer said, it's not controversial to want to do that, for heaven's sake.